Everybody ready? Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay, GTV, we're ready to begin. I'll do the 10-second countdown. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board. We have agenda and correspondence action items to deal with tonight. And as usual, the first thing we do is begin with our introductions of the members that are here. And I'd like to begin with Dave.
David Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
Kimberly Peace, Vice Chair.
Collis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Tim Redmond, Chair.
Gail LeBrecq, alternate and recording secretary.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
And we have on the phone.
This is Jim Raymond of the Dead Battery in Concord.
Thank you for calling in, Jim. We have a couple of vacant seats here tonight for elected members, so Gail and David will both be voting tonight as alternates. The first item on our agenda, as usual, is the minutes of our last meeting, which is October 14th, 2021. Has anyone had a chance, or has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? I'll ask for corrections and changes if we have any. Seeing none, I ask for a motion.
Dave Pierce, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 14th.
Been a motion made to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? Come on, somebody speak up.
I'll second it.
Second by Jim Raymond. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes of October 14th, 2021, as presented? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll have to abstain.
We
Me
have 2 abstentions this evening.
I just have a question. With Jim calling in, do we still need to do roll call votes for those?
Yes.
No, what you do need to do is take a quick vote to allow me to participate because I can't be there because of onboard issues.
Motion, since we have a quorum in the room, a motion to allow other board members to attend remotely.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion made by Dave, seconded by Kimberly, to, since we have a quorum, to allow Jim Raymond to participate by telephone.
But I believe you still have to do roll call
Yeah.
for
That's the
someone.
way I've seen it on the select board. When you
That's fine.
called in.
He'll call for a vote by roll.
Okay, we'll call for a vote on the motion first. So the motion's been made.
On the remote provision, this is under the standard right to know 91A that doesn't require roll call, I don't believe, but it's easier if I just don't participate and the Sigrid will vote, so it's your call.
We'll do the roll call vote, Jim, so you can stay on the line.
Okay.
So the motion is made to allow Jim Raymond to participate by phone with a roll call vote on votes. Been made by Dave, seconded by Kimberly. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Well, seeing none, I call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So we'll do roll call votes for our voting this evening. So we'll go back to the vote of the minutes. We'll have a second vote on that. So minutes were made, motion by Dave, seconded by Jim to accept the minutes. We'll have a roll call vote. Dave Pierce?
Yes?
Kimberly Peace?
Abstain.
Collis Adams?
Abstain, I was not present.
Tim Redmond, chair votes yes. Gail
Yes.
LeBrecq?
Yes.
And Jim Raymond?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay. All right, let me get back to the agenda. Okay, we have a request for tonight's application for map 9, lots 15, 16, and 18. Terrell Hill Road lot line adjustment. Joanne, could you please tell us what's going on with that application?
Yes, if you remember, this application came in 2 months ago or 2 meetings ago, and we were not able to vote on it because we didn't have clear comments from the fire department. They said they were okay with the lot line adjustment, but then they wanted to review it once it went for the building aspect of it. And went back and forth with them for 2 months now. And I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning. So we need to continue it again, and the applicant we did speak with the applicant and he was fine with that. So the recommendation is to continue this hearing until November 18th.
Anybody have any questions or discussion for staff or discussion among the board members?
No, I'll make a motion though to continue till the November 18th, 2021 meeting.
Okay, Collis has made a motion to grant the request for a continuance. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kimberly Peace. Any discussion on the motion to grant a continuance for map 9, lot 15, 16, and 18 to the November 18th, 2021 meeting? Seeing none, all those, we'll start with a roll call vote with Dave Pierce,
Yes.
Kimberly Peace,
Yes.
Collis Adams,
Yes.
Tim Redmond votes yes, Gail LeBrecq,
Yes.
Jim Raymond.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes to grant the continuance. Okay, we have an upcoming meeting on November the 4th. It's going to be a zoning workshop. Now, where is that being held, Joanne? Here in this room?
Here, yeah.
Okay. So that is our regularly scheduled November meeting, the first meeting in November?
There's 2 holidays in November. One is Veterans Day and the other is Thanksgiving, and they both happen to fall on Thursdays.
So rather than meet the second and fourth Thursdays, you'll be meeting the first and third. The first being a workshop and the third meeting, which is the 18th, will be a regular board meeting.
And we'll have, I see a bunch of applications, you show up here for the November 18th. We'll have all our information on all those applications that are being requested?
Yes.
Okay, the one for Factory Street, are they bringing in plans or are they just coming in for a verbal?
So we're meeting with them, staff is meeting with them on Tuesday.
Okay?
And they have changes that they would like to make. They will be bringing in plans. They'd like to speak with the board about possibly doing this as an administrative change or an immaterial change, but we'll know further once we meet with them Tuesday how involved the changes are to this particular plan.
Now, what would be described as non-material changes?
Well, basically, they're basically making improvements to the project. They're adding things that weren't included before. However, as a result of those changes, they've had to make some other changes that were not on the plan. So Eric has been reviewing the drainage design. They did provide a new drainage study. And he seems to be okay with everything so far, but we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the review on Tuesday. So we'll have a better view of how involved this is. The applicant they use Doug McGuire as their engineer, and he seems to think it's not that involved, but
That would be what he would think.
Eric did have issues when we first received the initial plans for the changes, and now that he's reviewed it and spoke with Doug a few times, and Doug came back with another revision, I think Eric feels more comfortable with this now.
So I'd like the board to have a brief discussion on our terminology of non-material changes to the plan, and I would start with anybody who would like to make a comment.
I was just going to ask, can you highlight the changes? I mean, just briefly, so we get a
Yes,
feel for how substantive they are.
So one of the things, so the first plan that they came in, they wanted to put in a dog, kind of like, I wouldn't call it a dog park, but a dog area, 2 separate places. And we brought up the concerns that it's very close to the river, and it's probably not a good idea. So they eliminated that. They had changed some of the contours where they were going to need a retaining wall, which is not included on the original plan. They have since removed that. They were in the area where this dog run would be. The town needed to get through there because that's where the manhole was, and they needed to have access for sewer to clean that out. And so that whole dog area was eliminated because it would have been fenced in and the fence would have been in the way. They have added outdoor fire pits. They've added outdoor seating, like in 2 different places on the plan. One is by the building where they have like an exercise room, and then the other is on the opposite end. The buildings have changed footprints, but not drastically, just a few hundred square feet. One building has been reduced, the other has been slightly enlarged. The 2 buildings, the newer buildings, will now have underground garages, completely underground, so they're going to be doing blasting. So that was another concern, 'cause
The first designs had first level parking and then
Yes.
4 levels of residential
Yes.
units.
so this now has, under, like, basement level.
And still,
Still 4 residential levels?
No, they've reduced the height, so it brought it down 1 level.
how many levels of residential housing, David is asking, on top of the parking garage?
I believe there is now
The original was 4,
4,
Over.
and that was with the garage,
because it was going to
including
be
the
a
garage.
5-story building.
Okay, so now it's a 4-story, so it's still 4 stories of residential with the garage under.
Mhm.
Um,
Potentially lower.
They've changed the number of units in the 2 newer buildings. They've reduced the number of units in the old building. That one initially had, I believe it was 13, and now they've reduced it down to 8, so they're making the units larger. The other 2 buildings, they've changed the number of units, but the overall number still remains at 99.
Okay.
So I think they've actually added some better quality to the project, more attractive for people to want to rent there. However, obviously they have to get approval in order to do that. So they're coming in just for a discussion and to see whether or not,
It's like a
you
conceptual.
all would agree. It's basically a conceptual.
Well, I think that if they're gonna be blasting, you would wanna identify areas, because if it's in the proximity of the sewer line, that is the main sewer line from Goffstown Village that goes into the pump station there. So that is gonna have to be reviewed by the sewer commission as well, I would
Right.
suspect.
And Eric is aware of that, obviously.
I'm sorry, I gotta admit, where is this property?
Factory Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah, I think I know that property.
So the reason for all of these changes is that, they have a new owner, fairly new owner, who now has different ideas than the former owner. So they're trying to make it a little bit more attractive. And they've actually changed the facade somewhat, so there's a little bit more brick on some of the buildings to have it blend into the older building.
So board members, including Jim on the phone, does anybody have any input for Joanne on her decision-making for whether this is a material or non-material change from board members?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first item Joanne mentioned, exterior patio area that may have seating or just in it, or
And a fire pit.
Fire pit. That to me is not a permanent structure that we would
Right.
be concerned about, and therefore, to me, that would be non-material.
Would noise be a consideration? Because we always talk about noise when anybody's near the river, the way the noise travels across the river to all the other houses in the proximity. So I just want to make sure that you consider noise as a consideration when you're having your discussions.
So it's not a permanent fire pit?
It is a
Well,
permanent
it's
fire pit.
permanent.
A fire pit.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not a fire pit is not a structure that
Oh, that's
is
different.
long-term permanent. It
Well-
could,
Well,
Should a
It's
fire
propane.
pit be presented,
yep.
Yeah.
You cannot-
you just have to weigh in all the facts, including people
Yeah.
gathering,
Yeah.
and time they're allowed to be out there till, noise, a lot of factors. And
So it's part of the community facilities for the residents.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
I think the dog park would be possibly a problem with noise. You know,
I
depending
think
on-
dogs make a lot less noise than people do when they're out there drinking next to the fire pit.
Quite often.
Sorry to be brutally honest, but that's just it. Footprints on the buildings, I'm concerned that if we're going to exceed the allowable square footage that was permitted under the original application, it should be a consideration, if they're going to increase square footage. I don't care if it's just a couple of hundred here and a couple hundred there. It is an increase of square footage. That's a consideration for me.
I feel like the length of this laundry list got really complicated kind of fast. And a little change here and a little change there, but I agree with Tim on the change of the square footage and the underground garage is kind of, I think that should be a discussion, given this location so close to the river. I think we would want to have a discussion about that. That's a lot of blasting.
Kimberly brings up a good point, Mr. Chair. The underground garage would have to have an entrance ramp from
Yeah,
the current ground elevation down. The entrance ramp would take up potentially some parking area.
Well, they're going to give up exterior parking on the flat outside the building if they're going to go under the building with parking.
they actually have enough room for the ramp because they needed to have space to get to the floor level parking. But the number of parking spaces, they've switched some of the ADA parking to different areas, but I believe the parking number was the same, but I could certainly double check
Are
that.
they in the floodplain?
Yeah,
So the parking underground is gonna flood during certain events, certain times?
Good
The-
question.
And this,
The-
isn't this a
the
designated
elevation of
river?
the
Like,
land-
They're gonna need shoreline for that.
The elevation of the land is maybe less than a foot below 100-year flood.
That's the land. The parking garage is going to be deeper.
Yeah.
Now,
Dug in.
the original first floor, if I remember the plans, is higher than the 100-year.
Okay.
Because there was, much of that area had 4 feet of fill compared to what it is today.
Well, these are just notes for Joanne to take so that when she has discussions with the applicant, that she has planning board input. Jim Raymond, are you on the phone still?
Guessing maybe.
Jim? He's still connected.
Maybe AAA showed up.
He just left the phone.
He might be outside attending to his car.
I'll just leave it for now in case he comes back.
All right.
Well, it's an interesting thing to look into. I mean,
Yeah.
it gives me reason to pause because I think back about, and I know this is not Las Vegas, but in Las Vegas, all their parking is underground and they use it for
Is it?
compensatory flood storage. You know, so there's some issues to think about
Yeah.
with underground.
And if you're going to have underground parking, the water that collects in an underground parking garage has to go somewhere.
Right.
So we'd have some stringent rules about treating the water, collecting the water. What are you going to do with it? You won't be able to dig a trench to the river and just dump it straight into the
I
river.
believe they added another detention pond.
Well,
Well, no,
there's
But
another.
not if the whole
another note.
area is still covered. You get to the issue of cars mistakenly left in the garage and then contaminated water.
So Joanne, I just want you to carefully consider the board's position on these issues before you grant them up.
I'm not granting anything. This definitely needs to come here for
Fine.
the board's
Okay.
determination.
Well, you can advise them of our input of tonight,
Yeah.
please,
Okay.
and let them know what the board was thinking.
Does anybody have anything else? with
I was just trying to come up with any other thoughts that crossed my mind. I think the question needs to be answered, David's question needs to be answered. If they were 5 stories of living space, are they going to be an underground parking garage with 5 stories of living space above? Or-
There were
4.
4 stories of
Oh, I'm
living
sorry. I thought they were
space.
5-story buildings for
No.
some reason.
A drive-in garage and 4 residential floors.
So 5 stories. of-
Drive-in garage mean under the house?
No.
At street level?
Ground level
Garages?
garage
Okay.
with 4 residential floors for a total of 5.
Okay. I don't remember that
And
part
I
of the
believe a
plan.
peak roof.
I don't remember that part
I
of the plan,
think
David.
that was only one building
No,
that they were
both.
doing that. Was it
Both.
both?
Both.
Okay,
So the ground level's parking, 4 residential floors above it.
exactly. So it's still 4 residential floors, but not 5
That's why it
stories.
became a 5-story building, because the garage was the first floor,
Mhm.
and then 4 stories of residences above the ground floor.
And they did get a variance
They
for
did get
the
a height.
height.
They did
And
remember.
they're not exceeding that variance.
Okay.
So I'll have more information after next week, but
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out how they're gonna reconfigure at this point then.
we did provide the plans to the fire department, and I received comments back today that they had no issues.
Okay. Anybody else have any other information for Joanne for her discussion? Jim, are you back on the phone? I guess not. All right. Thank you for that, Joanne.
You're welcome.
We also have that waiver conditional use permit for the driveway improvements at 240 Mast and Larch. Is that, you're going to provide us with the subdivision plan that was approved for that property that night?
Yes, we've been trying to get that homeowner to revise his application to enhance his answers, and so far he hasn't responded, so.
Well, it's going to be important that he has the answers enhanced for the
Yeah.
meeting, so it would be in his best interest to
Right.
provide information that you're
Right.
requesting.
Mhm.
And you'll have copies for the board of the original subdivision
Yeah,
plan.
we have that.
Are they providing a survey document of any kind or any documentation to show where the improvements have been made that they're requesting a conditional use permit and a waiver for?
So they're basically using the approved plan as their, surveyed plan.
Right, but,
And they're coming 10 feet in off of the fence.
yeah, that's a word out of an applicant's mouth. Are we going to see that from a surveyor on a document, the existing conditions as opposed to the approved conditions?
He has not submitted anything
Well, what
like
would the
that.
board's favor on that be? If we're talking about granting a waiver and a conditional use permit for larger parking area than was permitted under the subdivision plan, would we want to just take a sketch from the landowner, or would we want to see actual documents?
This is strictly for a waiver and a conditional use, so,
Because the paving was much
Right,
larger than
right.
approved.
no, I'm just saying it's not like a subdivision or
No, I
something.
understand.
How much larger order of magnitude?
What was the number? What's described? They were allowed, what, 24 feet?
They were allowed 22 feet of frontage, of the driveway itself, and they have I believe it's
38, I thought.
38. They've stated that they would eliminate the 10 feet off the property line, so that they would be then down to 28. And
So 28, they're looking
so they're
for
looking for a waiver from 22.
6 more feet than was permitted. Okay.
And then the conditional use permit is that they are too close. I believe it's not that much, it's probably 10 feet where they are too close to the driveway next door, which is also owned by them. They own 2 separate lots.
So the lot with the house on it, I went and looked, the lot with the house on it is a lot in question for the driveway. And the lot next door with the landscaping equipment is the same family, same owner.
Correct.
Okay. So if any of you go onto Larch Street and look at it, that's what it is. It's on the right-hand side as you head into Pinardville. On
And
Larch
it's on
Street.
the corner of Larch.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll hear from that applicant that night. If, hopefully he'll meet your request for information.
Okay.
Larch.
Larch Street is right past Back Talk Chiropractic on the right side, just past the Watoy,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
on the right-hand side. Actually, Larch Street is both sides of the road. The other side goes down to the condos that were built about 10 years ago,
Yeah,
at the end of that road.
more than that.
Maybe it's 15.
I was on the board at that time. That was a long time.
We won't put your memory in the records.
My memory is not record. Only this is record right here. Okay, anything else for upcoming meeting, Joanne, for the,
What's that? Jim? Did you hang up? I think so. I'm just gonna hang
all
up.
right,
Okay, I'm sorry.
it's fine.
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else on that list under correspondence?
I don't have anything, Joanne. I just had, I went to upcoming meetings, and there's nothing under correspondence and
Motion to
FYIs.
adjourn?
And what are the other upcoming meetings?
Just November 18th is all you have listed. We
Oh,
have
okay.
the lot line adjustment for map 9, lot 15, 16, 18, site plan addition to a dentist office,
Oh, that's.
Roosevelt and
Dr.
Laurier,
Mhm.
and then the request for a waiver and conditional use permit, and then the Factory Street multifamily non-material change request. And that
Doc-
sounds like a full meeting to me.
Dr. Mann is in Bernardville on Roosevelt.
That's what it
He's
says.
also on a corner, and he's in like an old house, and he's looking to add 3 feet into his office space because he has extra equipment that they didn't use, so many years ago, and he has no place to actually comfortably work on his patients, so he wants to expand the building by about 3 feet, and he's now into the setback.
He's behind the vet, right?
Yes. And he
Okay.
did get a variance from,
We're not really
So-
supposed to discuss applications
no, I'm
in
just telling you
depth. We just can get an
what he's
overview from
doing.
you.
I'm
Shall
not
we bring our
Make up
paperwork?
your mind where you're going tonight. All over the place.
Well, I've been advised by Jim not to discuss the particulars of an application. Tonight's discussion, I thought, was an advisory for Joanne.
Okay.
Well, if you thought I was wrong, then speak up next time.
Joanne, for the workshop on the 4th, tomorrow, you're distributing the first cut of the
Yes,
changes?
so we had a subcommittee, it was David, Barbara, myself, and Nancy, and we met once. And as a result of that, I sent David and Barbara the first draft. I've since made some changes to it, and I've also sent it to Derek to take a look at it. But it needs to be mailed out tomorrow because your meeting is next week.
Fire suppression top on the list or what?
No, this is the zoning ordinance, that would be development regulations. So yeah, there aren't very many changes, but I did add a solar ordinance, and it probably needs some massaging, but I did contact the town of Derry, and they just adopted one in August, so I took pieces from that, and they had also modeled it after the state ordinance, but they didn't include everything, so I also had patched some of those things together. So residential, residential solar is basically, they just go to the building inspector and they get a permit, and they can, put the rooftop, or they could put the ground mounting. But there are requirements in this section where it talks about, certain things of what they would need to do. And then there's a section that's also included within for commercial. So,
Commercial solar gets more complicated.
correct,
so,
yes. And then I had questions about things like, we have some sober houses going in town, and they're technically supposed to come for a site plan, but they don't. And so, in the zoning ordinance, there's a section called institutional, what's it called? Institutional, I can't think of the whole word, but institutional
Facility?
housing or something. So that's really geared more towards, larger, like it says you have to be 500 feet away from R1 and R2, things like that. So it's really more of like a larger type of house, or not house, but a larger type of building. But what's happening with these other places is we're having sober houses come in the residential neighborhood.
And this is a big political football in Manchester.
Is it?
Oh my God, it's on the front page of the Union Leader. There's a couple of them that are under zoning issues, and they don't have permission from the planning board.
Right.
And told to close.
So I added, under the category of institutional, I added sober houses. But then I questioned, like in our 5-point whatever section where it describes what you can and cannot do, I kind of questioned some of it because you can't really say you have to be 500 feet away in the R1 and R2. You basically might want to say they're not permitted in certain districts, not say 500 feet away. Like, that's what they used to do years ago, like, you can't have, you know, an adult magazine shop within 1,000 feet of a school or something. But really, I think there needs to be some consideration to maybe eliminating them from these certain residential areas.
What is a sober house?
It's a place where people
Recovering
go
alcoholics.
to sober up, and they're on their own. There's maybe, like, say 6 people living in a house, and they're basically on their own. They can come and go, but there is someone that checks in on them, and sometimes there's somebody that actually is on, you know, on duty to be with them so many hours and give them counseling and things like that. But for the most part, they're just living there.
How does that trigger planning?
Well, that's the thing.
Isn't allowed use.
They're saying we can live here, like, you
I
can't
would,
stop
I would
us
think
from
a
living
phone
here.
call to the Manchester Planning Board
Okay.
Director would probably enlighten you on what they're going through in Manchester and their hurdles they're going over, and maybe that would help you make an informed decision about what you want to do.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good.
I guess it's like you said, okay, so I'm getting the picture. So institutional, like, it's like a group home setting.
Correct.
It's not quite an apartment, it's not quite a house.
From what
Well,
I've
it could be a house,
Dave?
and they all have their
We,
own bed.
we already have a definition for institutional residential. That's
Okay.
what it's called. And so just the words sober house is part of a long list of what is meant by residential institution.
So, basically, it does say now doesn't have sober house in there, but for the other uses, it does require a site plan review, and no one ever comes in here for that.
This all comes down to people not wanting those kinds of people in their neighborhood
Right.
living next door. That's the bottom line. Because from what I'm reading in the paper, not everybody works. They all have chores to do at the house, they all have kitchen duties, they have cleaning duties, they have different duties. So it's a transitional
Right.
type of housing for people to get their lives together and rejoin society, is what it
Right.
really comes down to. But it also comes down to that if it's gonna be parked next door to your house, obviously you're gonna wanna say, I don't want that next to my house, unless you're a person who really believes in that, which is fine. But there's a lot of people that apparently don't, because Manchester is fighting
Yeah.
one on Orange Street right now.
Because it's not just alcohol addiction, it's drug addiction.
It is drug addiction.
Yeah, it's any type of
Right.
addiction.
And some people would automatically assume that because they've had these problems, that they're bad neighbors, even though they may be very good people that are just trying to get their life together.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just reading the newspaper, so there's a lot of information in Union Leader about
The
it.
fire department seems to get involved because I believe they have to be licensed from the state.
Oh, yeah.
And then when the license comes due, the fire department gets informed from the state for them to sign off, and the fire departments will say, you know, this has never been licensed, or, you know, there's issues, so
They also get funding.
they're much more familiar with it.
They also get funding, I think,
Yeah.
from federal government and from the state to run these types of situations.
There are other people in town who take care of other people, like they may have people living at their house, and they have, you know, certain bedrooms for them, and they get money from the state
Okay.
to basically take care of them.
All right.
I don't know what that's called, though.
Joanne, would you please get some information and report back to us on this matter? Thank you. Anybody have anything else for the meeting tonight? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Kimberly, seconded by Collis to adjourn. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We did that because Jim's not on the phone.